Welcome, everybody, to another Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and this week we're talking with R.Y. Givens, founder of Metamauic Entertainment. You can find them at metamauicentertainment.com. He's a writer, a videographer. He plays for a living, and he's making money doing it and having some fun. We're going to do that. Also, you mentioned a tennis player, a lookalike as well. He shared on his website in his bio, which I thought was funny. He might be the only person who looks more like Steve Harvey when we play Family Feud at the end of this video than I do. We'll figure all that out here in a second. Here we go. Welcome to the show. All right, RY, we like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week this week is our new sandals for Frenchmen. They're called Philippe Philats. The joke of the week is, why didn't dinosaurs drive cars? Because Tyrannosaurus Rex. Okay, there we go.
I was thinking of short arms, and I was like, I know there's something there, but I did not go there.
I like that too. The Tyrannosaurus Rex definitely having trouble with the stick shift. For sure. Okay. Well, that'll get us started in the right mood. Before we jump into it too far, the question I always like to ask everybody like yourself is, did you ever like have a serious job and do like a cubicle thing, or were you always playful and creative for your career?
It's like I thought that I should do a one of those serious kind of cubicle jobs, but I think quickly I learned that is just not for me. Probably I like to always have to be able to move around. So I've done a lot of like warehouse jobs before I do what I do now. So I mean, weirdly, I used to work at Target in the back room doing all of the fresh foods and stuff. And so I had a fun time back there. And I was like, thank God I can move around. I can play some music, and I can, make sure food is not expired. And so that's always a good thing. So, but like, I never had like serious corporate cubicle jobs. I do whatever it
I was
took.
just lamenting with a friend of mine last week or so, I think, about like those early jobs when you're a kid are so much fun. I mean, everybody else in those like, crappy minimum wage jobs, like working in a restaurant or in a warehouse or something like that. I kind of did both, like, and then I got into radio. It's so fun because you got other people who like don't have any money either. So you don't feel like a real comparison or anything. You're like, we're all trying to scrounge up enough money to have beer on Friday night or something like that, or go on a date. Like, nobody's high or low. Your job's not serious. You don't have the weight of keeping a company or a family together. Like, you're just doing the thing.
Just doing it, man. The people were the best. The people were the best. I'm like, I promise you, like, that was what kept me together. We could all complain together if need be.
Mm-hmm.
We could all just like laugh about how ridiculous it is, especially like I was in my 20s when I was working at Target. So come Christmas time, when it's about to be crazy, we were just like, it's like, just there's something fun about that camaraderie of not having to compete with everybody. It's just great. Like you said, we're scrounging up money together. We're doing whatever it takes to get through. It's so much fun, man. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Now take me back to the creative side of things. What came first, the writing or the video for you?
You know what's weird? That's a great question. The video came first. I was editing I've been editing since I was a kid. Been a video editor since I was a kid. Before like Adobe became what it was, like I was working with Adobe when it was just like a gray screen. And so and I did my highlight tapes doing that stuff and everything. I would always write some. I didn't think there was anything really in writing, but I really enjoyed the video editing process. So video came first, and then I found out I can actually take writing things that I've written and actually make videos out of it. Who would have thought? It's like a movie. It's like movies get made or something. So
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You sometimes, and that's a great lesson for this podcast already, right off the bat, is that I think there's this imposter syndrome when you're starting. You're like, oh well, I'm not good. I'm just doing this for fun, or I'm just trying to edit my own clips. But that's exactly where you should be when you're starting. That's how like famous directors get started. They make stupid little films with their friends that are 5 minutes long, and you're not supposed to be good at something when you start. And I think you can probably talk about that as an athlete there too. It's like the only way to get good at tennis is to be bad at tennis first, right? I think other sports, sometimes you can trick yourself. If it's like track and field and you're doing a 100-yard sprint, like you kind of know how to run and you're either fast or you're not. And then you're fighting for those top spots. But in tennis, no like 5-year-old knows how to play tennis. You're going to start awkward. You're going to hit some over the fence and lose a lot of balls and stuff before you get good at it. Is that fair? How did sports work in there too? It sounded like maybe that started first and then you wanted to do video for that.
Oh, sports were always at the forefront of everything. You know what's funny though? So in my brain, I 1000% agree with you that you got to be bad at something, but that's not what I think when I first go into it. I go into it thinking I'm about to be great. And then I come crashing down to reality when I realize, oh, turns out it's not just hitting the freaking ball. It turns out it's actually, some technique to this. So, it's funny. Like I heard someone say this one time, in order to get good at something, you have to be embarrassingly bad at it. And I don't like that part. I like to be, I want to know I'm a phenom right away, right off the bat. But I don't do that. I don't do that anymore. So tennis, sports, same way. Football, I played one position when I first started playing, especially in high school. I played cornerback when I first came in because I didn't really know that much about football because I was more of I played baseball. That was probably my main sport.
Nice.
And one day we were just like talking about playful humans. Like we had won a big game. And so the coaches decided for the defense, we played so well, we'll just play some touch football for practice instead of regular practice with pads on. So all I knew is I just wanted to catch the ball. So I went on the other side and was playing like receiver. And I was just absolutely dominant out there being a receiver. Whenever the ball was in the air, I just wanted to catch it. Like I was just faster. And then I was just like, wait a minute. This is a thing. I actually feel like I'm pretty good at this. And so then that next year, I actually switched to being a receiver my sophomore year. And that's when things started just taking off for me completely, man. It was funny how just like that playful side of it actually made it. But it's like one of those things where I just kind of knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't always understand all the different ways to which it can get done. So sports, huge in my life as far as how I get to know myself and everything. So
I'm loving this conversation because we already hit on like two more things there for me. I'm writing a book about playful humans and kind of what it takes to do this. And you hit on two things. One, some scientists researched it and stuff. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And there's like a wave where like when you start, you get this little momentum. You're like, oh, maybe I'm a little bit better. Or when you start studying a subject, you get this false confidence of like, oh, I read a book on, creative writing. I must be a creative writer. Yeah. And then you find out there's like this dip where you're like, oh no, actually doing this for a career is really hard. And so I think doing things for a hobby is great, and having fun with things and enjoying that first hill is a beautiful place to be. But then when you want to turn pro on something, there's another dip. There's that embarrassingly bad like trough of like, I have to work really hard to get over it and get past this dip to go back up the other side as a professional. And I find that fascinating because I think there's benefits to all those different parts of the growth process. And then once you're a professional, there's usually, in sports, there's physical decline and other things. Or if you do become successful, then there's this drop of like afterwards of, am I not successful as I was in the first part, or now I've gotten comfortable? We mentioned those fun jobs that we had when we were, young and coming out of school. And you're like, okay, as a 40-year-old man, I can't go back and have that job now. It wouldn't be the same. I wouldn't fit in with the people having it. I wouldn't have that irresponsibility and stuff that made that so much fun at the time. And so like, it's really interesting to me that we have to have a different side, like as an adult, like after we get past our prime or our professional phase into this like maintenance, and maybe we become a teacher or a coach phase after that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like two things you hit on too, like the dip part. And I always try to live with this. Someone told me this once, like living my life in curiosity instead of certainty. And so I think that always plays into a lot of my playfulness. Is I'm always just curious about a lot of different things. So even the older I get, I always try to think of what I call my old man sports, which is why I started when I started
picking up pickleball now instead of tennis, or what?
Tennis is my old man sport. I'm like, that's about as much as I and like it's so funny because I see like 70, 80-year-olds playing. And I mean, like, a few of them are hitting the ball, and I'm like, hey man, I'm gonna need for y'all to not be so good. And
yeah, my dad's that way. His dad would beat him when he was an All-American. His father in his like 50s or 60s could still beat him, and then mostly psychological, I think, but could still do it. And then my dad is still playing day to day when he was 70, and he's recently switched to pickleball and at 74. But that is a great way to keep playing and keep moving, and you learn different skill sets. Like you learn how to win differently at 70 than you did when you were 20, and you could just out hustle or hit harder, right?
Yeah. That was like the interesting thing. I guess I could talk sports all day, but like with tennis, one of the things with the dips, as you were talking about, like, because there's always going to be that dip I'm going to fail and then I'm going to get back up. So at first, when I first started playing, it was just hit the ball. That was all it came down to. Hit the ball and try to get it within the lines. Okay, all right, that is the only thing I'm going to focus on. Then eventually I started getting good at that. So then the dip happens when I'm about to learn something new. So now it's all right, now let's actually have control over where I'm hitting it. Now there's like a whole different like struggle of trying to get back up there. Then I get that, I hit that, another dip. So now the next level is like, all right, let's make sure that my serve is good and stuff like that. Another like that was now another just like going back up. And then after I'm kind of starting to get to that point where my serve is starting to be good. And now just there's always these different layers. So now because I'm starting to get some of the a lot of the just more basics, now there's different ways to which I can hit the ball and make it spin. So now I'm going to start learning those. Okay, cool. Yeah. And then after I get all of these small little pieces, now it becomes about strategy. And I think the part that I struggled with was I was trying to strategize without having the actual skills to actually do things with it. So and so now I'm at a point where I'm just like accepting where I am, and it's really, really helping me. And like as I'm continuing to progress, I can start to put strategies together as I get more comfortable and everything, man. So it's just something I love to see and be a part of. And that's something that like starts to, I think, separate like professionals from like the really, really good players and stuff like that are just straight up more athletic than you, but maybe don't have the mind. Or like for me, it was when I start going down mentally, how do I keep myself together? Oof, I had to practice that a lot. So just all
tennis, especially, but a lot of sports or even other creative pursuits, you know, I think in editing a video or writing a book, you get a part where you're like, oh, I'm passionate about this, I'm excited. And then you get into the slog of it. And then you're editing and you're like, dude, can I even write? I misspelled, I spell checked my 50,000 words, and there were over 1,000 grammatical errors with Grammarly in it. And first you're thinking, 1,000 mistakes, good Lord, like, can I even write? And then you look at it again and you go, okay, well, out of 50,000 words, that's actually not that bad. That's a pretty good success rate for mistakes. 99% of it's doing great. Not exactly, but and then you kind of go, okay, well, it's more about the message anyway, or you find something and then feedback is interesting. So I want to ask you about writing here in a second, but you also mentioned something else in your story there about, switching in football. It's like sometimes it clicks and you think you're bad at something, but then you get different feedback and you go, oh no, wait, I was just on the wrong side of the ball, or I wasn't doing this. And so for me, writing was that way. I was terrible in English. I was dyslexic. I went 0 for 20, I think, on a standardized test of like pick which word is misspelled, and they all look misspelled. I'd never seen any of the words before for me, so I was just picking the one that was most misspelled, And I was like, well, that can't be right. And so I ended up getting in a speed reading course and remedial reading and stuff. I'm like, well, I can read. It's just like, spelling that was trouble. But then spell check came out. And when I started writing, I had a college professor finally say, like, you hear the music in words, like you write differently and you think differently. And I was like, finally, somebody looked at my writing for the message instead of for the grammatical mistakes. And it changed the game for me. I started winning awards in writing, and now I've written a couple of books and stuff, and it really turned it on its head for me. So I'd love to hear your story about writing and the book Metamauic and how that came to be. What called you to writing?
To be honest, I like after my parents broke up, I didn't realize I was doing it, but I was just writing a lot of things down. Because it was the only way really that I could kind of keep myself emotionally together, which once again, I had no clue I was doing that. I was just doing it. But when I started really taking it serious is when I was in college. And it was just something to do. I was trying to take this easy, what I assumed was an easy course. It was called screenwriting history. And I was like, all right, whatever. I learned some history about whatever the freak this is. And I'm trying to get through this summer class. And and then I got in there and the guy at the end said, by the end, we're going to write like a whole 30-page screenplay as your last project. And I said, well, I got to get out of here. I'm not doing all that. And it was too late to drop the class though. So I just stood in it. And it was one of the interesting things I learned is I was writing this. It was supposed to be like a movie, like a small movie on some kind of historical event. And I wrote mine on Willis McGahee, who played running back for he played running back in the NFL for the Ravens and for the Bills, but he was on the 2001 Miami Hurricanes team that was just out of this world. And in this particular national championship game, which is true, it was a true story. He got hit in his knee and the knee bent backwards. And he still came back the next year and was still like a first round draft pick. So I was just like writing about that particular as if I was there. And what I learned is that I love the process of revising and editing when people and I can actually see the heart inside of it. So then I started taking more writing courses. I actually got a really great grade on that. And then I started writing a little bit more. And suddenly, I started realizing I was processing a lot. The reason why I got into writing, I would try to talk to people. No one ever listened to me. I didn't feel like I was good enough. So I started putting my perspectives into stories. I started putting pieces of my personality into characters. And then at one point in time, I just got too sucked up into it. And it was the only way I could live. But thank God I'm a little bit better at that. But Metamauic is kind of that same way. I was writing it really, by that time I was learning a little bit more about business stuff and everything. And I had made these macaroni necklaces because I didn't feel like what I had was good enough. So I was making something as more of a mental exercise that I can take what I have and that it's going to be good enough. And so I started making these little macaroni necklaces, and I just took some string. There's a whole story involved of just I'm completing with God of just guys tell me to make a necklace and everybody else is wearing gold. And I'm mad because all I see is macaroni and string on the table. And then by the end of the story, I just fuss with God. By the end, I go, fine, I'll just make this thing just to shut you up. And then God takes it in his hands and turns it into gold. Oh, that's cool. And so I started making these macaroni necklaces with a bunch of colors, and at the end was gold. So I was writing this book more so as a marketing thing to help understand how to put a book out there, but also what it's like to feel like I don't have enough, but yet that's good enough somehow. So, and just all of the emotions and everything that kind of goes into trying to push forward even when I don't feel like I'm worthy of being pushed forward. People
Yeah.
I can get mad at, mad at myself and all these different things, all these ways I can impact people or hurt people or all these different things I'm feeling all within myself. A lot of that book kind of came out through that. I did not expect that book to be written about a girl. When I write, I have a message, but I never have a story. So
Hmm.
as I started writing, like for some reason, uh what's the word? Fashion design started coming out. I know nothing about this. And then I was I was trying to find a way to make it about this a guy, but I was just like, something about this just doesn't feel right. So then I started thinking about how to make it. I made it about a girl. So I started just doing a bunch of research and everything on on some things. And but most of my stories, it's always a message that I'm trying to give. And the way to which it comes out can be so many different genres. Could be sports, could be a science fiction book I'm working on now. It could be a lot of different things. So writing, man, I'm very grateful for it. That's one thing I can't say.
I love that. And I appreciate you sharing, because I think more people need to hear that. It is a great way, even if you're just journaling for yourself and you're not publishing it, to like you said, get the thoughts out of your head. And it sounds like you're very sensitive and a self-aware person, that I think is special. And that's cool, because a lot of people, I think, struggle with that. And it's easier to tune out and, scroll on TikTok or watch Netflix or go drink or something, rather than trying to process the stuff that you're going through to learn and grow and get to the next level. And sometimes that takes some work. And then not being afraid to chase the muse and lean into these things, I think, is also another lesson there that I heard. It's, for me, that's always been the fun part. Like, I don't know why. I think it had something to do with the way I was raised and the family and stuff, that we were able to just kind of be silly or do things, or we were trying to make each other laugh, not trying to be a famous comedian or whatever. So it allowed me to say, oh yeah, well, I can try to make a necklace, or I can try and draw or paint, or if it's bad, that's okay. I don't have to show it to anybody. Like, it's okay to express creativity in different ways. And so for me, that came in a lot of different formats too. And I think it's fun to learn and grow in those things. And it's really interesting the way you approach writing in those stories. I don't feel like as good a storyteller. And I struggled with creativity for me, because in my head, I felt like a creative problem solver, or I could put pieces together, but I didn't know how to take something, like turn a blank page into a piece of art, and whatever that means. And then I realized that that's not how creativity works. I don't know exactly when I realized this, somewhere in my 20s, but what happens is what you're talking about in that editing process. Like, you get an idea, and then the form can change, or the story can change, or you can add pieces to it, or you can say, oh, this is a football story, or this one is a love story. And it doesn't have to be starting from scratch. You're really building on, and you're editing, and you're creating, like, as multiple steps, that I think a lot of people don't understand. When they think they're not creative, they don't understand that it's really just more about, I think, having the guts to express yourself, and then figuring out what that looks like to you that feels good and kind of matches.
It's interesting. You said something about, like, it reminds me of something. And I think this is where, like, a lot of my athletic background kind of comes in at. There are times where I truly have no clue what the heck this story is. And I am just writing words down and hoping it will make sense eventually. And when I leave out of, because I never write in my house. I go to a library here, and and sometimes I'll leave the library and just be like, this is the worst thing I've ever written in my life. I don't understand why anyone would even want to even hear or see this. But for me, writing is sticking it out because I know that I can refresh and revise this. I was given by a mentor of mine. He told me he told me easiest the easiest acts to write are the first act and the third act, because you're motivated and you can finally end it. It's the in between where you actually struggle with the most. I personally didn't find that was my struggle. Mine was finding a way to end it, because I get sad with endings. I don't like things to end. And so that's been a really big struggle of mine. However, like every single time I write, there's anxiety before I go in, because I have no clue where this is going to go or how it's going to come out. Sometimes there's insecurity once I get through, because I think this is the worst thing I've ever written. But I often have to remind myself, I don't have to go back and look at this right now. It's the first draft, Ryan. 80% of this I probably won't use, but the core of it I will find. But I have a very in-depth revision process, though. And so
I love hearing stories like that too. Like even editors that go, "Oh no, wait, the movie doesn't end here; it starts here." Like this is the interesting part. Like I wasted those first, whatever 3-5 chapters, but you're like that's okay. I got to where it's interesting, and chasing that muse, I think is really interesting. Before we end the podcast, though, I wanted to ask you one more question just about the career and how you feel like it's gone for you, and maybe how you balance day jobs or video production that you have to do versus the art that you want to do. And I think the interesting thing about Playful Humans is they kind of have a lot of different ways to get to a path of being able to share their voice and stuff. So what was that like for you? We talked a little bit before we hit record of like, you've kind of moved out of maybe like starving artist mode, or I want to do this, to actually being able to feel like you're at a place where you can have fun with it. How did that get there? And what was the mix between day job, paid work, and stuff that you've created or your own business?
So I'm very blessed in my day job. I freelance. And so most of my games happen at night, which is great because I'm not a morning person. And so I may work 4 or 5 hours, and then I have the rest of my days and everything to me. I don't work every single day, and I get paid pretty good. And so, and the job that I'm in is constantly keeping me in a creative mode. I film sports for a living. And so I have to constantly be able to adjust to whatever is happening, because I film the same sport, but never the same game. Every soccer match, every field hockey match, every football game, every basketball game, like it's the same sport, but I never see the same thing over and over. And so I have to constantly keep that creativity up. But most times before the game starts, we're usually eating or chilling or talking with each other. And so there's a time for me to always have to be able to stay connected to my stuff, or there's always some kind of creativity to stay connected to, because I am in a very creative field. I've gotten to a point now where I actually understand so much of the videography technical aspects of it that I actually like can see creatively shots now in the middle of the time. So so how I'm balancing that is every moment. I did this when I had a regular job, 9 to 5, and every moment that I get, I take it to write something down. If something hits me while I'm in the middle of a game, boom, I'll write it down on my phone real quick. And I know that I'll have time to be able to do it because I do freelance, because I am at that point now where I can actually think a little bit clearer.
I love that. I was going to mention that earlier when you're talking about those ideas. I use Evernote, and I love it because it syncs up phone, computer, and use short notes, long notes, take pictures of something, save it. And I just create folders. And sometimes those ideas that you think were terrible one day, like 3 years later, it pops back up, or you go, oh, what was that crazy quote I found? Or what was that thing I wrote that I didn't end up doing? And it comes back around and it finds the right moment. So I love having a journal or a notebook or something where you can keep those ideas. Great stuff today. I feel like we could keep going forever on this, and definitely nerd on this for a lot longer. But before we leave, do you want to play a game?
Let's play a game.
All right, here we go. We're playing Survey Says. We surveyed 100 people. The top 5 answers are on the board here. You get 1 of the top 5 and 2 out of 3, and you win the game. The first question is, Name something a person who loses 100 pounds suddenly has more of.
Speed.
Speed. I like that. I will give that to you. Number 3, energy and nicer clothes, self-esteem, shape, muscle, skin. Not so fun. Let's do something a man will do with a dirty shirt rather than wash it.
Put it back on.
Wear it again. Number 1 answer. Congratulations. We'll give you some applause for that. In the other ones, we have throw it in the trash, turn it inside out, use it as a rag, or throw it on the floor. All right. Last question. Name something a friend has that they brag is better than yours. What does a friend brag that's better than yours?
Significant other. No, that's
spouse. Number 3, car or truck. Number 1, house, job, or children in the top 5. So congratulations, you win a free 30-second commercial. I'll steal the easy ones. You can go check out RY's book, RY Givens. It's Metamauic, and you can find them at metamauicentertainment.com. We'll link that in the notes. If you're listening to the audio version, you won't know how to spell that. But if you're watching the video, it's pretty easy. It's right there on the screen. Ryan, how can we help you, or how can you help us?
I think we just did it by just sitting around and just having a good time. I have absolutely no clue, man. The fact that you
how can we support you in what you're doing for creativity and art or anything?
The link going up. As I have more books, I guess, and which I plan on dropping here soon, I will definitely let you guys know, and whatever I can do to help you guys out as far as being on the podcast or doing whatever would be the need, I can do that. But if I have more books, I'll send them y'all's way, and that would be very helpful, actually.
I love it. Again, thank you so much for the time and energy. Great stuff today. Check out RY Givens at Metamauicentertainment.com. You can check out Playful Humans at playfulhumans.com. We're helping adults rediscover the power of play. I have a new book coming out this year, so check that out. Subscribe to the podcast. Send it to somebody that you think needs to hear it. And until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. Later.